So with the first exercise, we're going to go through the clam exercise. Now, a lot of people will know this as soon as we start to do it. So obviously lying on your side, essentially the clam exercise is opening up your legs. And what this does is this, addresses the muscular weakness in the back of the hip. So the muscles that attach to the hip bone that run backwards towards your sacrum, back towards your back pocket. And what we see a lot here is we want to make sure that you're in a really nice, strong, stable position through your spine. A lot of people tend to roll backwards when they do this exercise. What we want to get you to do is we want you to roll forward to vertical. So if vertical is obviously straight up and down, we want you to roll your trunk and your hips a little bit sort of past that so we can bias the back of the hip. The second piece of this is you want to make sure that your knees are bent up to sort of 45 degrees essentially. We want to keep those feet together. And what we're doing here is not only are we just opening up the hip, but I want you to think about taking your knee out and up. So the mistake a lot of people make with this exercise is they tend to lift the knee up as they roll their hips and pelvis and trunk back. Obviously this takes a lot of the stress out of the hip, makes it more of sort of the front of the hip do the work as well. So it takes a lot of the onus off the muscles that we're trying to work on. So before we do the exercise, I always get my patients to dig their fingers into the hip bone at the side and come directly back from that so you can feel the muscle working. And this is really important to make sure that you're doing the right thing, using the right muscles. So having your fingers in, being forward of vertical, and thinking that your knee's coming out and up. You might find that you don't lift the knee up too high, so it's not an exercise where you're trying to get the knee up as high as possible. Keeping everything still, being rolled forwards, digging your fingers in, you might find that it only comes up a fraction, depending on your hip range of motion. And that's completely fine. So doing this, you shouldn't feel like your pelvis is rolling backwards. We want to get you to do 8 to 10 of these, maybe 2 or 3 sets. The numbers don't necessarily matter as much as fatigue. So if you feel fatigue after 10 or 15, that's fine. If you feel it after 3 or 4, that's also fine. There's no judgment. But as long as you make sure that you're not rolling back or you're not cheating in any way, you'll get a really good burn through that part of the hip. So it's a really, really important one because those hip rotators, the muscles that rotate the hip, are really important at generating that stability and that force at the hip to allow for normal function. And we see a lot with people who have sort of knee pain and Achilles issues and plantar fasciitis and a lot of the arch-dependent problems. It's not so much a problem with the foot collapsing, it's often a problem of the knees and the entire leg rotating inwards, which is prevented to a degree for a number of other reasons, but one of those is having that rotational hip stability. So being able to do the clam exercise sort of ties into being able to generate that rotational force of the hip, which is really important.